Pass Around the Smile is like your go-to friend, the one that lifts you up and backs you till the end. She's there to guide and inspire, challenge and teach, and remind you that your best self isn't out of reach. Self-development, manifestation, self-love and more, it's time to trust the process more than ever before. Welcome to Pass Around the Smile, the podcast. I'm your host, Cleo Massey, and I am so glad you're here. Let the magic begin. Hello and welcome to episode 1 of the Pass Around the Smile podcast. I honestly cannot believe I am finally doing this. It was about 3 years ago when my childhood friend Lily sent me a message and said, "You need to do a podcast." And I wrote back something like, "I know I need to, but I'm too scared." Fast forward 3 years, I'm finally doing it. But looking back in that interim, I was holding on to fear for many different reasons. I was holding on to fear because it kept me comfortable. I was holding on to fear because I didn't think that I was good enough. I was holding on to fear because the feeling of staying small and holding myself back was actually easier because getting out of your comfort zone is hard and scary, but we know that nothing good comes from comfort zones. Well, I do think good things come from comfort zones, like sitting on the couch and eating pasta with a side of chocky for dessert. Like, good things like that can come from comfort zones, but nothing exhilarating, nothing that is going to have you moving forward comes from comfort zones. So Lily, thank you for planting this seed, and for everyone in the interim over that 3 years as well that said, "Cleo, do a podcast." I'm finally listening. And universe, if you're listening to this too, I'm finally listening to you because I cannot count the amount of signs that I have had over the last 3 years to get this started. Now, in the light of fear, I decided to call this episode Navigating Fear and Releasing Pressure because it's only fitting. And at Pass Around the Smile, I'm all about being open and vulnerable and honest, and not just asking that of my community. I have to share that with you guys too. It's only fair. So this podcast is going to be an honest one, an open one, and I hope it can become a really safe place and a supportive place for all of my listeners. If you have been a Pass Around the Smile supporter for a while or even from the beginning, thank you so much. And if you are new, welcome. I think you're going to love it here. When I started Pass Around the Smile in 2015 as a blog, my goal was to guide and inspire people to realize their full power and potential. And that has not changed. That is my exact goal with this podcast. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what you can expect from this podcast moving forward. I thrive off talking about the law of attraction, manifesting, the power of your mind, the power of positivity, of gratitude, meditation, journaling. I love talking about finding your right path and your purpose, connecting with yourself and your higher powers, attracting signs, all of that magical stuff that can sometimes seem a bit woo-woo. I love talking about, but I also love to talk about the woo-woo stuff from a scientific point of view as well, which just makes it all the more real, especially on those days where we are losing faith and we find it hard to believe that you can ask and believe and then receive something. So I love talking about all of that, but I'm also all about being realistic at Pass Around the Smile. So we're going to delve into topics that may seem or feel uncomfortable, but I promise you that self-growth is meant to be uncomfortable. And while listening to a podcast that sometimes delves into the negative side of things might feel challenging, I can promise it's going to help you come out more positive on the other end in a way that allows you to move forward with a clearer mindset, a more optimistic mindset. So topics that include releasing negativity and actually identifying what negativity and what limiting beliefs are holding us back. I love to talk about releasing fear, guilt, pressure, also the deeper topics like empathy and forgiveness with things that we have dealt with in the past or things that may have been happening recently for you. I am here to hopefully guide and inspire you on the days where you feel not that great and on the days where you feel amazing as well. So that is Pass Around the Smile, the podcast. I'm not going to lie, I'm nervous. Of course, I'm still feeling the fear, but I'm feeling the fear and I'm doing it anyway. I'm not letting fear hold me back anymore. It stopped me for so long, and now I'm deciding to face it because we have a choice. We have a choice to face our fears and give it a go, or we have a choice to ignore them and regret it later. The thing about fear, well, Gabby Bernstein likes to think that fear stands for false evidence appearing real. And I really love that because fear isn't actually real. Of course, the feelings of fear are real, the nervousness that we get, the, anxiety in our chest. I'm not saying that's not real. Of course, that's real. But fear is just this thing that we cling to protect ourselves. It's a protective mechanism. But really, all it's doing is holding us back. So we need to be able to identify when the fear is popping up and which exact fears we're clinging to. And if we're clinging to those fears for reasons that are actually going to protect us, like of course sometimes fear needs to be acknowledged and listened to. Like if we're crossing the road and a car's coming, we're going to feel fear and we're going to step back. But the fear for me, for example, the fear of starting a podcast was around, what are people going to think of me? I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not capable enough. That's when the fear, yes, needs to be acknowledged and felt, but then moved away as quickly as possible. But the thing is, it can be actually really hard to acknowledge your fears in the first place because they can present in funny ways. Fear doesn't just show up through anxiety or through feeling scared of something. Fear shows up through jealousy, judgment, negative self-talk, and self-doubt, which, doesn't often seem like it's fear. But often what we are judging about others is a reflection of our own fears. So it can be a really good way to actually understand and acknowledge what your fears are and where they are coming from. And very often we hold on to fear because we're afraid of judgment or failure, right? They're probably the two main things I think that people hold on to fear. But the thing about failure is that failure brings with it so much opportunity. Failure helps us grow, helps us learn lessons that we may need really badly to use later on in life. Failure shows us redirection. Some failures looking back for me led me in a direction that I would never give up today. Like I look back and I remember how I felt when I failed at that certain thing, but then that led me to meet, this person or led me to this opportunity. So we've got to remember that when we're feeling the fear, we have a choice to go for it and maybe fail, or to go for it and maybe it goes really well. The thing is, if we do fail, if it is worst case scenario, it's really not that bad after all, because like I said, we learn and we are redirected. There was this study done, I think it was in Australia, and I'm going to read it to you because I feel like it's just such a good reminder for ourselves to live life unapologetically and not hold on to fear because we don't want to get to the end of our lives and look back with that regret. So Bronnie Ware is, yes, an Australian nurse who spent several years working in palliative care, caring for patients in the last 12 weeks of their lives. She recorded their dying epiphanies in a blog called Inspiration and Chai, which gathered so much attention that she put her observations into a book called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. So number 1 was, I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life that others had expected of me. Number 2, I wish I hadn't worked so hard. Number 3, I wish I'd had the courage to express my feelings. And number 4, I wish I had stayed in touch with my friends. Number 5, I wish that I had let myself be happier. While this study makes me really sad, it also helps me realize just how precious life is and how when we cling on to the hope of impressing others or seeking validation or doing things because society expects us to, that is not the way that we are supposed to live our lives, and that will only bring regret. What is worse than failing is the regret of not starting something. not knowing where that could have gone. So I really hope that that inspires you to feel the fear and do it anyway. What is it that you want to do? You can ask yourself, if you took fear out of the equation, if fear wasn't even a thing, what would you be doing? If there was no judgment, if there was no jealousy, if there was no negative self-talk, if there was only self-belief and love and support, what would you be doing? And that is your answer. That is what you need to start working toward. And of course, you're human, so the feelings of fear are still going to come up, the feelings of being rejected or the feelings of failing. But I encourage you, next time that you are maybe feeling like you are failing or you feel like you have just failed, is change that failure word, because that has such a negative connotation, to redirection. I'm just being redirected. I'm excited about where this could take me. I'm excited to see what's next. I'm excited to see where life is going to flow now. We have a choice. Wayne Dyer's quote is, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And I live by that quote now. Of course, sometimes, on some days, it's harder than others to lean into that belief. But very often when you change the way you look at things, all of the external sources change around that thing and things start flowing in a way that benefits you. When we give up that resistance and we begin to flow with life instead of against life, that's when we do allow it to flow with us. Now, it's natural for us humans to crave validation and instant gratuity from other people, and even that acceptance from society. But that is only going to give us a temporary feeling of satisfaction or of fulfillment. What we want and what we need is the long-lasting type of satisfaction and fulfillment. And the only person that you are going to get that from is yourself. So the only person that you need to impress is yourself. And then you'll feel that the need for the validation from, whether it's your families or friends or colleagues, it melts away. You won't need that validation from others because you will be validating yourself. You'll be feeling full in what you are doing for you. So if you feel the kind of pressure, I guess, coming on where you do want to impress others or fit into society's expectations in the next few weeks after listening to this podcast, first of all, don't be hard on yourself. It's completely normal. But remember that you have a choice. So acknowledge that you are having those thoughts and begin to unpack it. That is brave. That is what is actually going to help you unpack things and move forward in a better way, rather than just popping a Band-Aid on it. So I also wanted to talk about pressure, because feeling the fear also brings on pressure. And I feel like there's a good type of pressure and a bad type of pressure. The good type of pressure is the pressure where you want to do something because you feel called to, it feels right, you feel inspired, you feel excited. And yes, it still feels, hard. You're still working hard toward something, and sometimes it can feel challenging, but at the end of the day, when you complete that thing or you do that thing that you're going to feel really good and really inspired and so proud of yourself. That's the good type of pressure, because we don't want to just release all pressure, because then we'll just sit stagnant and not move forward. But then there's the negative type of pressure, which I believe we all feel far too often. And that is the pressure that often comes from external sources like society or of what other people expect or suggest of us. The type of pressure where we're doing something that feels forced, that doesn't exactly feel right. And it can be really hard too, because sometimes we feel like this is our right path, or I need to give this a go. But you got to ask yourself, why do you need to give this a go? Why do you think this is your right path? Is it because your parents told you it was? Is it because you should have a baby at this certain age that society says that? Is it because this is the cheaper option? Is it because it's the easier option? Or is it something that you actually genuinely want to do for you? One of the biggest blocks when manifesting your desires is asking for something that is not for you. And you're probably thinking, that sounds stupid. Of course, I always ask the universe when I'm manifesting for something that I want. But very often, we're actually asking for something that we think will make us happy, or we think will complete us. Or sometimes we are asking the universe for things because we know it will impress someone else, or because it will give us that validation or that recognition that we are craving. However, if you are asking for those reasons, your manifestation will not materialize in the way that you want it to. Now, I should preface too that I use the term universe a lot, but the universe to you is whatever the universe is to you. So it might be an angel, someone that you love in heaven. It might be a spirit animal. It might be just a ball of light and energy. It might be God or Buddha or Jesus. There is no right or wrongs, I believe, with spirituality or religion. I just believe that I personally have a higher power that looks over me and has my back, and I also ask for guidance all the time and for protection from my grandparents who are in heaven. So it's completely up to you. But just so you know, I use the word universe a lot, and that can be whatever it is for you. So this positive pressure versus the negative type of pressure. How do we identify it? Journaling really helps, and I'll give you some journaling prompts now that you can use, but you can also just answer in your head while you're listening to this podcast. So first of all, when do you feel pressure? And who do you believe that pressure is coming from? The third question I want you to ask yourself is, do you actually think that the majority of this pressure is coming from yourself? Now, your defense reflexes might pop up then and go, what? No, of course not. Like, I'm not putting pressure on myself. The pressure is coming from, this colleague or this family member or that friend. But very often, the pressure does come from ourselves. For example, if I'm scrolling through social media and I see this girl exercising every single day, and I then feel the pressure to exercise more. Sure, this girl ignited the pressure, but I was the one who chose to take the pressure on. It's not her fault. It's me doing it to myself. The pressure that we feel from people that we love can often be really hard to recognize because we know that they're coming from a place of love, a place of care. However, we can feel this pressure to impress them or do what they say because we know they're coming from a place of care. However, what they're saying might not be right for us. So being able to set those boundaries and be strong enough in saying thank you but no, and redirecting and not taking on that pressure is a really huge part of self-development. You get to choose what you do with the pressure that feels like it has been placed on you from external sources. I want you to remember that you are doing yourself a disservice when you take on this pressure from the external sources, because those external sources don't care. They're off living their lives, doing their things, loving their family and their friends and working toward their goals. However, if you are left behind feeling the pressure that they seemingly put on you by, saying this or that, but you just took it a certain way, you are then left with feelings of self-doubt, with feelings of fear, which create the anxiety, which block your manifestations, which stop you from vibrating at a high level, therefore giving good energy to the ones that you love. So you are doing yourself a disservice by letting this fear and this pressure take over you. So next time that you feel the feelings of fear, feel the feelings of pressure coming on, I want you to stop, rest, and reassess. Take a look at what's happening in your mind. Is it because you've been there before? Is it because you're scared of being rejected? Is it because you're scared of what a family member might think of you? They are all completely valid. So first of all, you need to be kind to yourself. It's completely natural and completely normal. But you need to honor yourself and what you deserve so that you can move forward, which means releasing the fear and releasing the pressure, as hard as it is. You don't want to get to the end of your life and think, I lived a life on other people's terms and not my terms. So what do your terms say? What do you want to do? If you took fear out of the equation, like I said before, what would you be doing? In my positive guidance journal, there is a question on the thoughts and feelings page. No, the listening to your heart page, which is, if you took fear out of the equation, what would you be doing? And my answer was the same for the last 3 years. It was do the podcast. But like I've already said, fear held me back for so long. It's crazy what happens when you finally give in to fear and listen to the signs that the universe has been sending you. Since starting this podcast, things have just flowed, not only with the podcast, but in other areas of my life as well, because I finally stopped resisting. I finally thought, okay, I am going to not only honor what my higher powers, who I do really believe have my back, are saying, but I'm going to honor myself and my talents and why I was put in this world to do what I was meant to do. I'm going to honor that, even though it's scary. And when you honor what feels right, things just flow. Doors open up. So I encourage you to trust the process. Listen to the signs. Watch out for the coincidences that are happening around you. It's very possible that the universe, that your angels, your higher powers are trying to have a say in your life. Remember too that sometimes opportunities can present in quite a small, unexciting way. For example, when the idea for my blog, Pass Around the Smile, came to me, I was in quite a negative place and I wasn't excited by the idea, but it came to me and I decided to trust the process because not much else was flowing in my life. So when I decided to take that somewhat small and unexciting idea, I then realized that the universe had a much bigger plan than I could have ever imagined. And it has now led to my life purpose. It has led me to live a life where I feel so fulfilled. So a reminder that you might be seeking or searching for purpose or for answers, and it is very likely that the universe is sending you the signs. However, you need to be in alignment to see those signs, to hear those signs or feel those signs, which we'll talk about in another episode. But when those signs come, not to brush them away because they seem small or off purpose. Like, I didn't really want to write a blog. Even when I started writing this blog, it felt right, so I was trusting the process, but it wasn't what I was asking for. However, then it turned into more than I could ever ask for. So trust the process. Give things a go. Give up the need to control. The universe sees possibilities that we can't see. So when you trust that, that's when life becomes really exciting and really magical. Oh my gosh, okay, I think I'm going to end the episode here because just like when I do my courses and events, I get so excited about all of the topics and everything I want to say that I just go blah, 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 blah. However, with the podcast, I'm trying to be really careful with keeping different topics for different episodes. And I did want to say, some of you who are listening may not have any idea of who I am, where I'm from, what I do. Episode 2 is going to be around my life purpose and how it came to be. It was quite the journey, and I will let you guys know a little bit about who I am and my life, but I did just want to start the first episode on fear and pressure because it was relevant and I think that everyone can relate in some way. So please tune in to episode 2. I am pretty excited about that one, and if you don't know me, it will give you more insight to who I am, and if you do know me and if you've heard my story before, sorry, I guess you don't have to listen, but there will definitely be lots of little lessons in there around finding your right path, finding your right purpose, and trusting the process and giving up that need to control. Because I really do believe when you give up control, life flows with you instead of against you. So thank you so much for listening to episode 1. I am so thankful to have you guys on this journey with me. I am going to keep trusting the process, and I hope you do too.